I recently lived through what I'd call a homeowner's worst nightmare. The HOA president barged straight into my backyard and staged a full-blown community wellness class inside my private pool. And her excuse, my property, she claimed, was a resource for neighborhood health. The irony, the only thing they all shared that day was my tracer dye, staining them a shade of green that looked straight out of a science lab. But let's rewind. Ever wondered how a calm suburban morning can explode into a glowing green battleground you never signed up for? Let me take you to the exact moment my peaceful retreat turned into a radioactive war zone. I was by the pool, like any responsible homeowner, skimmer in one hand, hot coffee in the other, watching the morning sun dance across the water like it was showing off. Birds sang from the maples Sarah and I planted back when we still believed in neighborhood bliss. Then came the clatter of the side gate, loud as a prison door. Enter Karen Miller, HOA president, self-appointed queen of Maple Lane. She strutted in like a soap opera villain, red visor perched like a crown, white polo starched tighter than her grip on the neighborhood's soul, and she made sure you remembered her name, Miller. Behind her, 6 women in identical swim caps and high-end workout gear that probably cost more than my mortgage. Karen raised her clipboard like a sword and announced, Community Wellness Initiative. She declared that when property benefits neighborhood health, it becomes communal. Her smile, the kind that could curdle fresh milk. Excuse me, I managed, coffee frozen halfway to my lips. This is my private pool, not your water aerobics studio. She waved me off like a gnat buzzing too close to her perfect suburban helmet of hair. Don't be dramatic, Robert. Before I could even process her audacity, a tall blonde with linebacker shoulders handed Karen a crisp 20 and launched into a cannonball that exploded across my deck like the opening shot of war. That's when I decided it was time to use the little surprise I'd been saving. See, after the first whispers about Karen's community programs, I had installed a hidden control panel beneath the pool coping. A big red button labeled emergency use only by Sarah waited like a loaded weapon. What Karen didn't know, I'd brushed a thin coat of UV tracer powder on the gate latch and rail. Everything she touched, clipboard, cash, you name it, would glow. So I pressed the button with the satisfaction of a man pulling the ripcord on justice. At the same time, I hit 911 on speaker so dispatch could hear it all. 911. What's your emergency? Trespassers in my private pool, conducting paid aquatic aerobics led by our HOA president, I said. And the water's about to make the case persuasive. Sir, are they armed? With entitlement and a clipboard, I replied. The dispatcher sighed. Remain calm. Unix en route. Do not engage. Too late, I muttered, because the mist was already rising. For 3 beats it looked harmless, like morning dew. Then chemistry unleashed hell. Tracer dye bonded with sunscreen and chlorine, turning the water into glowing lime sludge like alien blood under the sun. Screams erupted. The blonde scrambled out of the pool, her hands glowing neon green. Karen's eyes widened as she realized she had lost control. You ruined everything, she shrieked, charging me like royalty denied her throne. She shoved me and I stumbled, coffee arcing perfectly before I fell into the glowing mess myself. For a heartbeat. Silence. Chlorine burned my eyes, lungs screamed for air. But I rose to chaos, and then came Doug, our HOA's wannabe security guard, beard full of last week's crumbs, gut spilling over his crooked badge. He slapped my phone from my hand just as sirens wailed closer. Neighbors poured in, cameras rolling, live streaming Karen's humiliation for the whole block. She clutched her cash box, dripping neon water, realizing too late she'd just been exposed. Red and blue light strobed across our fence as Deputy Martinez stepped out, the same deputy who'd dismissed this as a civil matter last month. I lifted my cracked phone, still streaming, and pointed straight at Karen. Private property, paid classes, no consent. Karen tried to pivot. This man assaulted us with chemicals. Martinez glanced at the no trespassing signs, the glowing water, the cash box in her hands. Ma'am, did you pay to swim here? They paid me, she stammered. And just like that, the ground dropped beneath her argument. Abernathy from the board arrived with paperwork in hand. Madam President has just admitted to running a business on private property. We'll take your resignation along with those receipts. Karen jabbed her finger at me. He set me up. Martinez turned his recorder toward her. Nobody makes you break and enter with a cash drawer. And there I stood, soaked, glowing, heart racing, knowing the next words out of my mouth would decide everything. Hero, villain, or just another cautionary tale about what happens when you push a homeowner too far. Because 6 months earlier, Sarah and I had rolled down Maple Lane with open windows and hopeful hearts. We found a house that felt like a dream. White fence, a pool so blue it outshined the sky, neighbors who waved like they'd rehearsed it. We signed the papers with shaking hands and whispered, we made it. But dreams don't survive long when Karen Miller holds the clipboard. The first violation slip hit like a warning shot. Paint shade not approved, then trash visible after pickup window, then lawn exceeds 2-inch limit, all signed by Karen. I obeyed. At first repainted, hid the trash, But each fix felt less like home improvement and more like surrender. And every morning Sarah's forehead crease deepened, then Karen showed up in person visor, polo, clipboard, and a smile that was anything but friendly. Her cookies were bricks. Her clipboard already had violation slips pre-filled with our address. Soon after, she posted on the HOA app about pool-positive households contributing to community wellness. Translation: she wanted our pool, even hinted at taxing us for wellness equity. And when she glanced at Sarah's pregnant belly and suggested it'd be better for us to share the liability, that's when I knew this wasn't about community. This was a takeover. The glowing pool. That was just the beginning of my answer. I marched outside, voice low but steady. Out now. Karen didn't flinch. She patted the empty chair beside her like a queen inviting me into her court. Community fitness program. Robert, read your covenants. I'd already called the sheriff. Deputy Martinez showed up 20 minutes later, scribbling notes with the enthusiasm of an insurance adjuster. His verdict was a gut punch. Civil issue, sir. Work it out with your board. And just like that, he left me standing in my own driveway while strangers splashed in water I paid to heat. And Karen collected cash for services I never approved. An hour later, a man in a reflective vest appeared. City inspection, he announced, flashing something that looked like a badge if he squinted hard enough. Immediate stop use order on your pool. Unsafe dimensions. Unsafe dimensions, I asked, dumbfounded. Height variance, he said, pointing at the water like it explained everything. I dialed the city on speaker. 3 rings. The clerk answered flatly. We don't do surprise pool inspections, and height variance isn't a thing. I turned the phone so Vest could hear. He tugged his cap, muttered miscommunication, and Crab walked back down the driveway. As he passed the mailbox, a yellow slip fell from his clipboard. Karen's letterhead staring up at me. I snapped a photo, picked it up with 2 fingers, and bagged it like evidence from a crime scene, because it was. That evening, Sarah asked the question that still echoes in our quietest moments. What kind of neighborhood did we move into? I opened the garage, pulled out PVC pipe and electrical wire, and began building something Karen Miller had never seen coming. If she wanted war fought with rules and fake regulations, she'd picked the wrong enemy. Justice was coming to Maple Lane, and it would glow bright enough to be seen from space. After Martinez's dismissive wave off, I woke the next morning grinding my teeth so hard I half expected enamel dust on my pillow. If the law wouldn't guard us, hardware would. I started small, surgical, a ring of thumbnail-sized cameras hidden in the azaleas where Karen's patrols would never spot them. Window sensors wired to my phone, pinging whenever anything bigger than a cat moved near. Smart locks on every door and gate, each one keyed to my fingerprint. Then came the masterpiece, a 12-foot steel sliding gate, thick enough to stop a rhino, closing with a deep, satisfying clank like a bank vault sealing shut. Each project stole hours of sleep, but every bolt tightened was an inch of psychological armor. At 1:13 a.m., a ping gate tamper. I stepped onto the deck with a flashlight, wearing my most disappointed dad voice. On screen, Doug's silhouette hunched at the latch, toothpick dangling, testing keys like a kid jamming coins into a vending machine. He flicked a cigarette into my garden, blessed the sprinkler timer. It kicked on and drenched him head to toe. He yelped, tore off a soggy tag he'd zip-tied there. Safety inspection failed and sloshed away. I picked it up with tongs and filed it under Exhibit A. Safety theater. Then Karen weaponized social media. Every upgrade I made appeared on the HOA app with her mocking captions. Robert's Fort Knox, when paranoia meets power tools. The likes poured in. Neighbors who used to wave now crossed the street, avoiding eye contact like my security. System was contagious. Sarah tried to laugh it off. At least they appreciate your craftsmanship. But her smile broke when we sat on the porch and realized no one waved anymore. The whole street looked at us like radioactive neighbors ready to explode. Joey next door was the only bright spot. He leaned over our shared fence with cold sodas and worse jokes. Dude, add a moat and I'll bring the gators. But even he double-checked his lock before heading inside. The real escalation came when Doug stood at my gate like a storm waiting to break. Arms folded, HOA security patch half torn, eyes gleaming with the thrill of authority. Karen wants the sprinkler. Plans, he said. His voice was low, almost friendly like a loan shark explaining terms. I stayed behind the latch. Tell her to read the permit file. He tapped the post. You're 2 inches over height code. We can make that disappear, or we can make you tear it down. The threat tasted like cold pennies. My fists clenched. Blood thundered in my ears. For a heartbeat I saw myself dragging him across the lawn, knuckles cracking bone. But then another memory rose. Afghanistan, a village market. One bad decision turning respect into ruin. I'd promised Sarah never again. I stepped back. Doug mistook it for surrender. His grin widened across the yard. Old Mr. Abernathy watered his petunias. He gave the smallest shake of his head. Slow, measured. We'd spoken twice. Yet in that gesture I heard gravel-rough wisdom. Win smart, not hard. I let the gate slam shut. Minutes later, Abernathy shuffled over, hose hissing at his feet. Counting Solicitor, 22 years. He held out a Ziploc bag with a chain of custody form already filled with my name. My hobbies: slapping bullies with paper. Document everything: time, date, who touched what. Paper kills panic. He nodded toward my cameras. Get redundancy, triplicate drives, one offside, a tap to the steel gate. Boundaries at good records win. Then he turned back to his flowers like we'd just talked fertilizer instead of war. 15 minutes later, Karen glided up the walk like a realtor haunting her own listing. No clipboard this time, just a manila envelope, she purred. Let's be neighbors again. She slid the envelope across. Inside, 5 waiver forms, a pre-signed access agreement, and a spa gift card Sarah liked. You donate 2 afternoons a week for wellness hours. I make those little variances vanish. Everybody wins. Everybody. I asked. She leaned in. Perfume, sweet as poison. It'd be a shame if an unsafe gate complicated your insurance, especially with a baby on the way. Liability is such an ugly word. I raised my phone. The camera blinked red. Ugly words look great on video. Her smile cracked. You're making enemies you can't afford. Good, I said. Volume, discount. That night, a neat row of thumbtacks glittered across our driveway like a malicious smile. A sympathy card sat on the porch. We all want what's best for the community. No signature. I swept the tacks into a jar, dropped the card in and labeled it Exhibit B. Friendship. Joey suggested mailing it back with confetti. Abernathy advised chain of custody. We compromised. I scrawled on the lid. Confetti, but make. It fell in. Inside, Sarah watched from the kitchen window, one hand resting on the curve of new life beneath her sweater. Are we safe? She whispered. Not yet, I admitted, but we will be. That night, the dining table became a war room. Laptop glowing, schematic spread, coffee rings mapping each stage of anger. Joey slid in with a 6-pack. Abernathy. We arrived later, slower, with a notebook full of legal citations. We brainstormed lawsuit, injunction, media exposure, but every road led to months of delay. And Karen smirking poolside. Stinger, Joey said. Catch the queen ant with crumbs all over her face. Sarah frowned at the metaphor but nodded. Evidence she couldn't spin or bury. The plan crystallized around midnight. We christened it Operation Citrus, HIGHLIGHTER. In the garage, Joey inflated a kiddie pool. Abernathy measured tracer dye with pharmacist solemnity. Food grade, he said, but don't drink it unless you want your insides glowing with regret. I misted sunscreen over the water. Sarah flicked on the UV deck light. Whomp. The pool went neon lime like a cartoon crime scene. Joey dabbed a finger, streaked, his cheek like war paint. Sarah grinned. Congratulations. That's your evidence. We logged fade times, dilution rates, rinse windows. When the neighbor's cat padded through, Joey gasped, scooped it up, and saved us from creating Schrodinger's glow kitty. Data gathered, cat unglowed, laughter banked. Before calling it ready, we ran the ethics check. Abernathy pulled up municipal manual, same tracer dye used for storm drain tests. Safe, non-hazardous. We staged eyewash bottles, towels, laminated instructions at the gate. Sarah drilled us twice on emergency procedures. Masks, gate override, evacuation. I filed a note with the non-emergency line. Possible trespass. Brightly colored water, no medical risk. If things went sideways, the record would show we chose bright, not brutal. We needed proof so damning even her pet deputy couldn't ignore it. Joey knew a guy with HOA financial records. Abernathy mentioned a disgruntled board member asking the right questions, but the heart of our plan was simpler: patience. Karen's arrogance would bury her. Every camera I'd installed, every sensor, every backup hole feeding into the cloud. She'll make another move, I said, pouring coffee. She can't help herself. When she does, we'll be ready. Sarah squeezed my hand. Promise me no glory moves, only smart moves. Smart moves, I promised. Outside, a truck engine idled in the dark, then faded. The fuse was lit, but this time, the match was in my hand. An hour later, Joey rolled his RC car out under the fence, a tiny monster truck with a camera taped to the hood. Stickered with, "This vehicle makes complete stops." We followed it through the alley to where Karen held court beside her SUV. Maple Lane must cooperate, she told her loyalists. If they won't, we create compliance. Define create, someone asked. Karen smiled, the kind dentists warn about. We enforce standards. Overflow trash citations, repeat fines, noise complaints, paper trails scare people. The audio was garbage, the video grainy, but the faces were gold. Joey parked the RC near a storm drain, headlights blinking Morse code for yikes. We retrieved it 10 minutes later, slipping out before Doug's suspicious raccoon eyes found us. Morning would show whether restraint could win a war. Either way, when the sun rose over Maple Lane, justice would be wide awake. Tuesday dawned with a kind of silence that makes your nerves crawl. I woke with that familiar itch between my shoulders, the one that used to warn me of roadside bombs. Sarah was already at the window, coffee mug pressed to her lips like a shield, eyes locked on the street. What is it? I asked. She pointed at the corner. The mail truck idled. Third time this week, same driver, same stop pattern. But nothing delivered since Monday. Sunglasses on under cloudy skies. Clipboard in hand, glancing at our house between checks, not postal, behavior, surveillance. How long had he been there? 20 minutes just sitting. The truck finally rolled away, but not before the driver gave our gate one last, lingering look that chilled me to the bone. I memorized the license plate anyway. Even though I knew it probably led nowhere useful, I grabbed Sarah's sedan and tailed him 3 car lengths back. Odd thing, he skipped 2 actual mailboxes, took a right onto Oak, then drifted behind the rec center. That's when the mask slipped. The driver hopped out, peeled a magnetic USPS decal off the door, and slapped on a landscaping company logo like changing hats. I raised my phone. Click. He froze, caught, then scrambled back into the truck and peeled out faster than overnight postage. Later, when I slowed the footage frame by frame, my stomach dropped. In the glove compartment, not stamps, a roll of yellow HOA violation slips. Later, that morning while Sarah was at her doctor's appointment, I decided to pay Ron a visit. If Karen was planning something bigger, the HOA treasurer would know. Money always leaves a trail. Ron answered the door looking like he hadn't slept in a week. Wrinkled shirt, hair sticking out, a twitch in his left eye that hadn't been there before. "Rob," he muttered, glancing past me like Karen herself might materialize. "I can't. We shouldn't be talking." "Ron," I said, planting my boot in the doorway before he could close it. "Whatever she's got on you, it's not worth this. Look at yourself." He laughed, bitter hollow. "You think this is about me? Rob, you have no idea what you're up against." The warp played out across his face, fear against conscience. Finally, conscience barely scraped a win. 10 minutes, he said, stepping aside. "Then you leave." And we never had this conversation. His kitchen table looked like a battlefield command center. Bank statements, invoices, legal papers, emails scattered in frantic piles. "She's been embezzling for years," Ron said, sliding documents toward me with shaking hands. "Skimming maintenance, inflating contractor bills, inventing expenses." He shoved a map at me. 14 properties bought through shell companies after she depressed their value with fines and harassment. Remember, the Fosters refused to sell electrical fire. 2 weeks later, one of her LLCs scooped up the ashes. I stared at the evidence. My voice was flat. "She's not just stealing from the HOA, she's stealing the neighborhood." Ron's voice dropped lower. "There's a development company behind her, very well funded. 2 weeks ago, someone broke into my daughter's apartment. Didn't steal a thing, just left a message on her bathroom mirror. 'Your father needs to be more careful.'" My blood ran cold. This wasn't neighborhood politics anymore. It was organized crime wearing an HOA letterhead. "Ron, we can stop her," I pressed. He shook his head, eyes hollow. "I'm already dead, Rob. I just haven't stopped breathing. The only reason I'm still standing is because she needs me to keep the books clean a little while longer." What if we had proof? Real, undeniable proof. For the first time, hope flickered in his tired eyes. "What kind of proof?" "The kind that collapses houses of cards," I said. "The kind that buries people in federal prison cells instead of burning down homes." Ron reached under the table and pulled out a small digital recorder. "Everything we've talked about is on here, plus 3 other recordings. Karen doesn't know about this one." He pressed it into my hand. "If something happens to me, if I disappear, make sure this gets to someone outside her reach." I pocketed it. "Nothing's going to happen to you, Ron." "Maybe not," he whispered. "But understand, she's not some petty dictator with a clipboard. She's a criminal with resources, connections, and nothing to lose." When I left his house, I felt eyes. A mail truck parked 3 blocks down. A landscaping crew suddenly trimming hedges across the street. Too coordinated, too rehearsed. This wasn't about swimming pools anymore. This was about survival. Karen wasn't trying to control us. She was trying to erase us. By the time I got home, Sarah was back, glowing with good news from her appointment. But the moment she saw my face, her smile faltered. "What happened?" I told her everything wrong. The embezzlement, the shell companies, the Fosters, the development companies circling like vultures. When I finished, she was pale but resolute. "So, what do? We document everything. Build a case so solid even corrupt officials can't bury it. And then," I looked out at our peaceful street hiding an ugly truth, "we burn her whole operation to the ground." Sarah nodded, one hand on her belly. "For the baby, for everyone she's hurt, everyone she plans to hurt." That evening, I stood at the window watching their surveillance team fail at looking inconspicuous. They thought they were watching potential victims. They were wrong. They were watching the people who were about to bring their empire down. Earlier we'd canvassed the block. Most doors cracked open an inch, fear leaking out like cold air. But Mrs. Delgado didn't crack. She swung her door wide. "Bring me proof and I'll bring a quorum," she said, scribbling 3 names on a notepad. "People who are tired of being quiet." That night, Sarah and I sat at the kitchen table with Ron's recorder between us like a loaded gun. Karen's voice played back embezzlement, threats, schemes that made mob bosses sound polite. We had everything we needed. The question wasn't, can we win? It was, how far are we willing to go? We could leave, Sarah whispered, hand resting on her small bump. Take this to the FBI, disappear, start fresh. She was scared, and rightfully so. This wasn't just an HOA tyrant anymore. It was organized crime with torches. You want to run? I asked quietly. I want our baby to have both parents alive, she said, voice cracking. I want to sleep without wondering if someone's pouring gasoline around our foundation. I took her trembling hand. If we run now, what happens to the next family, to the next neighborhood she guts? That's not our responsibility, isn't it? The silence pressed heavy. She was right, I was fraying. Every noise in the house made me reach for a weapon. Every car on our street felt like a threat. I was becoming someone I barely recognized. But then I thought of Ron's daughter waking up to that lipstick threat, of the Fosters barely escaping their burning house, of all the families before us who chose silence. There's a right way to do this, I said finally, and there's a smart way. They don't have to be the same. Sarah raised an eyebrow, meaning? I pointed to the surveillance van across the street, meaning we don't have to choose between running and dying. There's a third option. Eyes searched mine recognition. It was the same look I'd worn when I told her I was enlisting. Quiet determination. We end this, I said. Surgical, clean, no heroics, no unnecessary risks. We use their own system against them. Her voice was steady but wary. And how exactly? Karen has 3 vulnerabilities. Ron's cooperation, corrupt local officials, and staying off federal radar. I sketched it out. We document everything. Then we bypass local cops and go straight to the FBI's public corruption unit. And we don't just hand them recordings. We catch her in the act with federal agents listening. Sarah leaned forward, drawn in despite herself. How we make her think she's won. We offer to sell, insist on meeting her directly, get her talking about the deal, the shell companies, maybe even the Foster's fire while wearing a federal wire. That's dangerous, less dangerous than running and hoping she doesn't find us, less dangerous than letting her keep going. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, if we do this, we get guarantees, federal protection, relocation if needed, and the second I think you're in danger, we abort. Agreed. And after the baby we're done. No more crusades. Absolutely. She studied my face. Whatever she saw convinced her. She nodded. Okay. But we do this smart. We follow protocol. No risks. The weight lifted from me like a stone. This wasn't revenge. This was justice. There's one more thing, she said, touching her belly. If something goes wrong, promise me you won't blame yourself. We face this together. Partners, I whispered. Partners. Asterisks. She played a voice memo. The grainy whoosh-whoosh of our baby's heartbeat filled the room. Not music, not words, just promise. No heroics, she said. Just good tape work, I answered, tapping Ron's recorder. Outside, the surveillance van rumbled away, convinced we were trapped. They had no idea. By dawn, we'd mirrored every file. One drive couriered to the state AG, one sealed for the FBI intake box, one locked in Abernathy's safe. At 2:11 a.m., my phone buzzed. Blocked number, a woman's sing-song voice. Congratulations on the baby. Sleep is important, you should try it, with both eyes closed. Click. Sarah found me documenting the call. She didn't cry. She just took my hand, placed it on her belly. This is why, she whispered. The baby kicked like agreement. Tomorrow, the war would truly begin. The cable stayed coiled on deck, but the sting of the dying documents threatened to spread faster. If the cuff snapped shut first, the referrals would only climb higher up the chain. The next evening, the recreation hall thrummed like a hornet's nest that had been kicked hard with steel-toed boots. Folding chairs sat in uneven rows along the walls, filled now with neighbors who'd whispered behind closed doors for months but were finally ready to speak their truths aloud. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, that flat institutional drone that makes everything feel a little apocalyptic. Despite the October chill slipping through the hall's thin siding, sweat gleamed on anxious brows. I stood at the lectern, with my laptop, feeling less like a neighbor and more like a prosecutor about to deliver closing arguments in the trial of the century. Abernathy loomed beside me like a granite gargoyle in tweed, weathered hands folded across a briefcase loaded with enough legal firepower to topple a minor dictatorship. Sarah sat front row, one hand resting protectively on the gentle swell of our child, the other gripping her phone to livestream for neighbors too afraid to attend. Joey lounged near the back with his own phone propped, grinning like a fan about to watch his team clinch a championship. Ron paced at the exit, a flash drive clenched like nuclear launch codes in a way. It was the detonator for Karen's corrupt empire. At exactly 7:01 p.m. Acting Chair Mrs. Delgado struck the gavel. The crack rang like a gunshot through the tension. She was a small woman, steel gray hair pulled back, radiating the quiet command of someone who'd spent decades teaching middle school. She had seen bullies before and knew how to break them. First agenda item, she announced, her voice sharp and steady. Allegations and charges against former President Karen Miller and Security Officer Doug King. The room vibrated with nervous energy, like charged air before a storm. Some shifted uncomfortably, still cowed by Karen's shadow despite her arrest earlier that day. Others leaned forward eagerly, starved for the reckoning long overdue. I hooked my laptop into the ancient projector. The collective breath in the room held as the screen flickered alive, then burst an electric green glow that washed every face with an eerie, otherworldly sheen. The first image filled the screen. Karen caught mid-lunge at the pool, arms flailing. Rage and disbelief twisted on her face. Tracer dye swirling around her like radioactive smoke. The crowd gasped in unison, half in shock, half in suppressed laughter that sounded like justice clearing its throat. "This footage was captured on my private property," I said, voice steady despite adrenaline pounding in my veins. "During an unauthorized commercial swimming operation, no permission, no permits, no payment." Click next slide. Karen's cash box, stuffed with glowing bills under lab lights. The ultraviolet powder lit them like gifts wrapped for prosecutors. Each $20 pulsed with its own inner lit stack of smoking guns in currency form. These bills were treated with ultraviolet tracking powder used by banks, I continued, voice firming. Every bill touched by Mrs. Miller now carries her prints and UV traces, backed by video evidence. This is enough to convict in any courtroom. Murmurs rippled across the room like waves striking rock. Karen's allies squirmed, whispering frantically, some slipping out, abandoning ship before it sank. Click. The screen lit up with spreadsheets, fraudulent line items highlighted in yellow, a roadmap to theft. Month after month, funds siphoned into Karen's accounts while residents faced higher dues and decaying property. I stepped aside and gestured to Ron. He approached the mic like a man walking to the gallows, but determined. His hands trembled unfolding papers, yet his voice rang clear, unburdened at last. "For the past 8 months," he read, "I've documented systematic embezzlement through a fake budget line called the Pool Enhancement Initiative." The room erupted, shouts, accusations, outrage crackling like shrapnel. "Witch hunt," someone bellowed. I shaded my eyes toward the voice. "If this were a witch hunt, sir, we'd be searching for brooms, not bank transfers." Laughter burst the tension. Even Mrs. Delgado almost smiled before hammering her gavel. Bang, bang, bang. Order restored. Ron's voice wavered but held. "Total stolen, $67,432.18. Payments traced to a post office box controlled solely by Karen Miller. No contractors hired, no pool enhancements. The money funneled directly into her accounts while dues were raised to cover the loss." A woman from the third row, one of Karen's diehards, jumped up, her voice shrill with desperation. "Fabricated robber planted evidence to frame her. She only wanted to serve this community." Abernathy rose, Redditor's smooth, decades of courtroom authority wrapped in his voice. "Ma'am, every exhibit presented has been independently verified by forensic accountants, reviewed by the DA's office, authenticated through strict chain of custody. Bank records, fingerprints, video analysis, witness statements, audits." He held up a thick sealed folder, all available for public inspection, and all leading to one truth: systematic theft, fraud, and abuse of power. The defense crumbled visibly like a dam splitting. Former allies whispered bitter arguments. Others slipped out, unwilling to sync with the ship. Mrs. Delgado scanned the chaos, then raised her gavel once more, weary but resolute. "The board will now vote on the emergency removal of Karen Miller and Doug King from all HOA authority, pending criminal resolution. All in favor." Hands shot up, blooming like flowers after rain. I counted 17, 18, 23, 27. Even former supporters defected, desperate to protect themselves. Opposed only 3 hands. Karen's sister, her next-door neighbor, likely indebted, and an elderly man who'd slept through the numbers and seemed confused. "Motion carries," Delgado declared. The gavel fell like a coffin lid. Karen's reign was buried, but the night wasn't finished. 2 deputies, waiting quietly at the exit, stepped forward with official documents and faint smirks. "Additional charges filed this afternoon," Deputy Martinez announced. "Conspiracy to commit fraud, organized theft, breach of fiduciary duty, and criminal harassment." The final blow came from Tina, a single mother at the back. She rose with her own folder, her voice trembling yet fierce with years of pent anger. "She made our lives hell," Tina said through tears. "Late fees we couldn't pay, fines for violations that never existed, harassment that drove my neighbor to sell at a loss just to escape. This was never about community standards, it was about cruelty." The hall fell silent. Even the AC seemed to pause. When she finished, applause broke like a dam. One person, then another, until the whole room stood, thunderous ovation rattling the walls. Mrs. Delgado blinked tears and struck her gavel. Meeting adjourned. Doug lunged down the aisle, jaw tight, fists cocked. "This is a sham. You can't." The deputies cut him off. "Sir," hands visible. He ignored them, reaching for the projector cart. "Bad move." In one smooth motion they spun him, cuffs clicking home. "On what charge?" he barked. "Disorderly conduct for starters," Martinez said coolly. "We'll build from there." As they hauled him out, Joey quipped, "Finally, a bracelet program this community can get behind." But no one left. Instead, neighbors gathered, in clusters, trading thanks, apologies, even potluck invites. A woman who once cited my grass violation pressed a lemon pie into my hands. A teen lifeguard asked if we'd still host swim lessons legally this time. As the crowd thinned, I glanced at the paused projector frame, its green glow casting faces in shades of repentance and renewal. Maple Lane's worst night had turned into rebirth, a community free to breathe again. What began with yellow violation slips ended not in violence but in votes. Not vengeance but justice. Sarah clasped my hand as we left. I realized the best victories aren't those where you crush enemies but where you free everyone else from their grip. Dusk settled soft over Maple Lane. Warm, forgiving. The pool, once a neon battlefield where lies and truth collided, now lay glass still, cobalt blue. No fences rattled, no sirens screamed, just sprinklers ticking in distant yards, and the laughter of children, fearless at last. Sarah and I sat, poolside, feet in cool water. Her laugh, long absent, rippled back. The baby kicked beneath her palm, as if celebrating peace. Joey cannonballed, surfacing with a grin. No tracer this time, right? I shook my head. He whooped, swimming lazy. Laps if I glow tomorrow, he teased, slicking hair back. I'm suing for superhero royalties. Mrs. Delgado strolled by with brownies. File it under community spirit. Abernathy without glancing up from his plate. Royalties are taxable, Joey groaned. Justice has paperwork, huh? Sarah tapped my shoulder. Always. Porch. Lights winked on across the street. Delgado set out chairs for a block potluck. Ron appeared with a cake iced bright green. Justice, a joke that finally earned laughs. The Johnson twins manned a card table with glow sticks for legal fees $1. A coupon taped beneath. Good for one cannonball with permission. We bought 10. A push alert buzzed my phone. Former HOA president enters plea deal, cooperating with state AG. The photo showed her SUV and a new wardrobe, prison jumpsuit. Joey whistled. Neon's still her color. Even Abernathy murmured. Karen pled guilty this afternoon. The legal machine grinds on. Our war is over. I walked the fence line one last time. Motion sensors blinked steady, no longer tripwires but porch. Lanterns. The steel gate stood as a boundary, not fortress. Sarah nudged me, still counting threats. Habit, I admitted, watching kids chase fireflies. But the numbers are dropping. Keep the skills, she said. Lose the fear. The question that haunted me surfaced again. What is justice? Tonight it looked like this: quiet yards, clean water, laughter that didn't flinch, and a child who would grow up knowing fences could protect without imprisoning. Joey climbed out, dripping. Gate pass for the Gryloff. I tossed him a keycard. Bring ribs. Leave drama. Sarah squeezed my hand. Promise we keep it this way. No more wars unless someone truly needs saving. I glanced at the maples swaying in dusk. Proficient. If trouble crosses the fence, we'll face it smart. Together, she finished. We sat until stars salted the sky, and pool lights shimmered ripples that almost glowed green but never crossed into accusation. Neighbors drifted home, chairs scraping pavement, good nights floating over lawns. Justice wasn't the roar of triumph. It was the hush that follows when peace finally has room to grow.